Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now. Got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now. Got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinero.
No. It's with me, Matt Ohayon.
the sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6 beer. Intense by nature. And Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Locage. It's gonna be sick.
Good Friday evening, Sick Army. I am Matt Ohayon, and you are listening to the Sick Podcast. The Italian Stallion is off tonight. As you know, the Hebrew Hammer is in. Before we get into it, I got to tell you about Energy Transportation Group. They are a full leading full service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. 8.6 beer, intense by nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and passion in order to make their mark. And Locage, if the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, well, it's time you go back to Locage because the menu will surprise you. It is a special edition of the Sick Podcast. We do have our Sick Friday roundtable tonight. Before I introduce our panelists, I have to start off with an apology, and it pains me to do this. Last week, I gave you guys the Matt Ohayon guarantee that the Cincinnati Bengals would beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe we should have had Cash on because he picked the Chiefs and he ended up being right. It was a terrible, terrible Sunday for me. It was great when T. Higgins mossed two defenders. It was great when Samaje Perine bulldozed his way into the end zone. I thought the Bengals were going to win. They had their chances. People were complaining about the refs. Listen, I can question reffing. I will never pin a loss by a team on reffing. The Bengals had their chances. They didn't do it. I'm very sad. You'll notice I'm not wearing Bengals gear. That's for those who don't watch football. They were eliminated last week. Onward and upward. All right, now that that's out of the way, let us introduce our two panelists. First up, we have Scott Matla, a recurring guest on the Friday edition of the Sick Podcast. Scott, how are we?
I'm doing all right. It's colder than all get out in Buffalo, New York right now. So cold that even the dog doesn't want to go outside for any reason. So it's chilly, but doing all right here on Friday night.
Fantastic. Is it minus 42 over there? Because that's what it reads over here.
In freedom units,
at least
not quite.
At least, you know what? I'll say this. So I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I know they'd meet at minus 45 in Fahrenheit. Full disclosure, it feels like minus 42, which at that point it's minus 42 in my head.
Yeah, it feels like minus 8 Fahrenheit, which is minus not something great here right now. That's all.
It's minus really cold. It's minus terribly
exactly
cold. That's what it is. Exactly. All right. Well, happy you're staying warm and happy you're here with us. Our next panelist is Mr. Moe Khan. Mo, how are you?
Gentlemen, I'm wearing a suit because it's cold outside and cold inside as well.
Well, if I notice, Scott, are you wearing? Because I see that the Canada toque. You are wearing a Wrexham AFC hat. Okay, fantastic. I should have worn my Manchester United kit. Just great. We could even touch on that later in the show. Mo, how are you dealing with the cold today?
I'm well, Mattio. I am very well. It's been a long time since we were a tag team. It's been almost 8-9 months since we last saw each other physically.
Yeah, like that.
Do this show with you. An honor to be on with you on this Friday night on a very cold Friday All-Star weekend.
Yes, it is All-Star weekend. We will get to that, but first we're going to start off with the Habs. So just to update everyone, the Habs are now 20-27-4. So I have this. Read this any way you want. Right now, they have a 7.5% chance at the first overall selection if the season were to end today and the draft lottery was tomorrow. They are either, depending on the way you look at it, 3 points ahead or behind of San Jose, and they are 1 point ahead or behind of Vancouver. Vancouver is below them in the tank standings. San Jose is above them in the tank standings. Okay, there's your update. Let's talk about the Habs now. In the week that was a very short week for the Canadiens, it ended on Tuesday for them. But, I mean, let's look at the past 7 games. The wins obviously haven't been there. It's been mostly losses, which, depending on the fans you're talking to, is a good thing. But the biggest story from the past week, 2 weeks, has to be Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Just absolutely fantastic. 5 goals in 7 games. And I mean, it's just, I'll start with you, Scott, because you watch a lot of Laval Rocket. You cover them. I mean, were you? I can't. I'll ask you. Were you expecting this type of production when he was called up?
No, I was expecting this type of effort, though. Anyone who's listened to me yell, scream, kick, throw chairs about the Laval Rocket, one of the names besides Jesse Olinen that always comes up is Raphael Harvey-Pinard, because people want that prime Brendan Gallagher back. And currently that Gallagher is not coming back unless he gets a completely new hip replacement at some point in this. Raphael Harvey-Pinard plays that style that is, it's hustle, it's never quitting on everything. And you look at some of the goals he scored against Ottawa on Tuesday, that's what you want to see. They're not winning games, but you see the effort and he cares. And he went from, the 13th or 12th forward or whatever they were playing with at the time to playing on Nick Suzuki's wing by the end of the game. That's what you want to see in terms of development. I didn't expect 5 goals in 7 games. I expected the odd goal here and there, but damned if he isn't taking the opportunity that's been given to him and running away with it. There's a reason why they didn't send him down for the NHL All-Star break. This is a guy they want to have around here because he's proving that he can keep that spot right now, and they'll shift that around. But it's hard to not feel happy watching another 7th round pick move up into the NHL and potentially seal themselves an NHL spot, even in a season that's, about losing games. This is a huge positive step forward. It's really great to see him producing, and even when the production goes away, that effort and hustle is still going to be there. And that's exactly what you want to see if you're Martin St. Louis.
Mo, what about
Yeah,
yourself?
guys,
Are you expecting this type of go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, guys, when you look at Harvey-Pinard, I mean, he has magnets. The puck is a magnet to his stick, and he's scoring these goals. And you think about this being a contract year for him, he's going to get a pay raise. And we all believe that he should crack this lineup for October training camp when we have game 1 for the new year. Maybe Connor Bedard being with Montreal Canadiens, who knows by then. But you're seeing now that Martin St. Louis is believing in these young pups or these young players to come up to the system here and showcase. Remember, it's not about the system, it's about concepts, right? And for him to do what he's done so far in the time he's been with the Montreal Canadiens, I think if you're a Habs fan, you want to be able to fortify your 3rd and 4th lines, because we talk about this being top heavy. The first line is the best when they're healthy, but after that, it's all the unknowns. So for Kent Hughes, for Jeff Gordon, and for the entire scouting staff, they can start piecing the puzzle together. And I think this would be not a monumental summer, but this would be an important summer of a building blocks to build around the 2nd line and 3rd line. But you have a guy like Harvey-Pinard in the system, that's going to help this team go a little bit quicker in the development of what they want to be in 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, and that's I like what you said in that it's going to be a really big offseason. It's because every offseason is big, of course. But I mean, when you're in a stage like this, there's two ends of the spectrum where you are having really massive off seasons. One of them is when you're on one end of the spectrum, you're on the verge of winning a championship. Let's say you got eliminated in the 2nd round of the playoffs. You were a piece, or at least the team feels you're a piece or 2 away from winning the Stanley Cup, and it just didn't happen for you. Or you're a bottom feeder and you can tell that there is something there with your team, and it's time to get out of that funk, because it's going to be 2 years now that they're bottom. I mean, I guess we could call them bottom 5 teams, even though it's not this year. It's technically not so far, but I think it really is a monumental offseason, because there are so many decisions to be made, and it's a big job ahead, because you want to get out of there because you see the potential that some of these players have and you want them to progress, yet you're kind of cap strapped by some of these, let's call them what they are, terrible contracts. Obviously the big one is Brendan Gallagher's.
I think Mo brought up a good point, is that this is a contract year and you want to be able to build. Good teams are able to build from within and promote and fill their lineup that, this guy had a really good year. We can't really afford to keep him here. We can let him go. Look at what Tampa's done for so long. They kept some core stars And then guys are just coming up through their system and they're getting them on 3-4 year deals that are $1 million, $2 million at the most, and building around that and supplementing their lineup because their NHL and AHL system are working in unison here. And Raphael Harvey-Pinard can be that guy there that, oh, hey, we need a middle six guy here who's going to generate shots and is going to be, a nuisance on the forecheck. Why you don't have to go out and pay $3-4 million for that when you've got that in your system and you've developed that properly. You don't have to go out and pay a third line center $3.5 million to kill penalties or whatever that is if you develop that in your system. And when some of these deadweight contracts, and I say that with the best inflection possible, are moved out, you have younger guys who are going to be coming in. In the upcoming years, you have Joshua Waugh, you have Riley Kidney who are going to be coming in, and maybe they need some AHL time first, but that's fine. You have whoever they're picking in the top 7 this year, plus whatever Florida's pick is. You have Owen Beck coming in. You have guys that you can bring into this lineup, even if you're still losing games, and you don't have to, and you can move some of these other pieces out or let them cook and trade them after there. So I'm really interested to see, can there be another Harvey-Pinard behind that? We know Jesse Ylönen is going to be a potential NHLer. He's got all the skill and talent. We know Harvey-Pinard is an NHLer with just this effort and everything. Who is that next person up, even if they're not in the system quite yet right now?
I would go with Owen Beck. I would go with Owen Beck,
Yeah.
right? Think about it, guys. Owen Beck was 2 games away from being on this team in October of this past season, right? So now he gets a sample size, a taste of what it's like to be in the pro level in the middle of the season. That's going to fuel him to become that guy. And look, down the spine, they're locked, I think, for the next year and a half. And I think they're okay. And Beck has time, runway to kind of build himself up physically and mentally at the pro level. But you're right, guys. Like Owen Beck, you think about what they have in their system being cultivated. It might take a couple of years here, but they could be a Tampa team, not at that level of success, but they could be in the same avenue of they could be a top 3 in the division in a very tough division that they're in right now. But there is potential in the system to say, yeah, this is a much better team today than where they were 48 months ago or even 24 months ago from where they are.
And you mentioned Owen Beck, and it just brought to me, I tend to have a macro view on these types of things. I feel like, again, just going back to the upcoming offseason, I'm glad it's this group of management that's in charge, because they, Kent Hughes as an agent. I have a friend who interned at an agency firm a couple of years ago, and he told me how it works. Basically, you are as an agent, you are essentially scouting players since they're 13 years old. So he has a lot of experience with young prospects, young players, and especially young minds. So I'm happy that he's the one that's there, and he's been evaluating talent, at that level, and then even and below. So because there's so many names in the prospect pool today, and it's unbelievable to think about, because for how many years were we saying the cupboard was completely dry, and then 2 or 3 years later, it's just like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We have all these defensemen, and there's still Logan Mailloux in the OHL. There's still, there's so many guys down in the junior ranks and even college ranks, at forward. There's Lane Hudson, who's playing college hockey. It's crazy. I find there's so much, and there's so much to manage, and there's going to be so much in roster management that goes into this, that I have a very good feeling about just this ownership group being the one to lead the charge and make these decisions on player personnel.
I think the biggest part with all this too is that going into this offseason, I'm looking at Cap Friendly behind me right now, and there are names coming off the book, like Sean Monahan's coming off, Jonathan Drouin is coming off, Evgeny Dodonov is coming off, Paul Byron is coming off. There's money there in the opportunity for them to, obviously Cole Caulfield's going to need a new contract. Guys like Jordan Harris are going to get re-signed. They got to fill out some of these other places, but they're slowly gaining that cap flexibility right when the cap is supposed to start shooting up in a big way too. It's only going up $1 million next year, is what I believe was reported. And then it's going to grow from there now that they've hit whatever that escrow mark is or whatever nonsense that the NHL wants to call it. And at that point, if you have shed Josh Anderson's contract or traded it for assets, and David Savard will be a free agent or retired, and et cetera, you have all this money now you have these young guys coming in, your Sean Farrells, your Lane Hudsons, your Luke Tucks, et cetera, from college, guys from Europe if they come over and are ready for that role, the junior guys, and you have this young core that you've built up, then you make that splash in free agency. You go after whatever the big fish is in however many years. When you think you are ready and you build that there, I know there was a lot of talk, and I was part of that, is, hey, maybe they signed Patrice Bergeron for 1 year in Montreal. It'll be fun. Obviously not a thing that comes to pass, but they'll have that cap flexibility to do so. Hughes and Gorton have a vision for what they want to do. And the hardest part has been doing that because cap didn't go up. The team is injured to hell and back twice at this point now. It's been a slow going and it requires patience, but they haven't made rash moves. Everything has been made with a purpose and an intent towards going towards their goal. And sometimes it's a small little jump forward. And then sometimes it's you're trading, the Tyler Toffoli deal or trading Ben Sherratt for an unprotected first round pick. And you make that huge step forward on that next step there. And the trade deadline, I know people are saying that people are calling about Josh Anderson, but they don't want to trade Josh Anderson or the market's not here for this. The market's there for anybody. The minute teams start to get desperate, anybody will try something for anything to get what they want if they think it'll give them an opportunity. And I think that's kind of what Kent Hughes is waiting for. We had that first trade trip. The Bo Horvat trade happened. It's like the Toffoli trade last year. Other dominoes are going to start to fall in quick order here because we're a month from the trade deadline. Everything's about to pick up, and Kent Hughes is sitting here with a deck full of cards that teams are going to go playoff experience, former Stanley Cup champion, big, scores goals on the power play. Teams are looking for pieces here, and when their first options maybe strike out, they're going to come to Kent Hughes and go, okay, what is it going to take to get Josh Anderson or Joel Edmondson or Mike Hoffman, etc.? And Hughes holds that leverage because he has stuff people want, even if they say they don't want it right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find, just listening to what some insiders have been saying across the various networks over on Twitter, it kind of feels like you bring up a great point because it saying that trades aren't really happening because kind of every team is kind of cap strapped right now, but teams need to upgrade or are going to want to upgrade at least to make a run at the cup. And I just, it feels like if they want to have made a trade, they'll make it work and it'll happen already. And they're just kind of waiting for that first domino to fall into setting the market. And I think, I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, I saw that Bo Horvat trade and I understand he's he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, but I don't know. I felt like that was not a good deal for Vancouver, especially because that pick wasn't it is top 12 protected. I don't know. That seems like you're giving up a guy who's like one of the leading goal scorers in the NHL, and it's just not happening. By the way, you see Mo just left. We're having a little bit of technical issues, but we're gonna get them resolved. So he'll be back. Don't worry, everyone. And but yeah, I mean, I just think that trade was just not a good one for Vancouver. You got Anthony Beauvillier, and listen, I always liked him. I always rooted for him, but fact is he's never had more than 40 points in a season or something like that. So, I don't know. I just didn't like that for Vancouver.
I'm kind of torn because I don't understand it from either side. I don't think the Islanders are going to make the playoffs, but they also gave up Atu Ratu, who was one of their top prospects, someone I liked in his draft year, and fell a little bit due to just having a bad draft season. It happens, and then he was tearing it up, played really well in the AHL. They got a first-round pick from a team that's probably going to slowly creep towards that cliff, especially as their what once used to be a really good defense gets older and ages out. Ilya Sorokin's great, but if Ilya Sorokin isn't top tier, where are the New York Islanders? And Beauvillier is Beauvillier. He's a perfectly cromulent middle six forward. I don't understand it for either side. Vancouver, it feels like, didn't get enough for one of their best players and trade pieces. And the Islanders made this trade, and I don't understand why they gave up what they did when they don't exactly have a full prospect pool to pick from. And it's a very weird thing. I don't fully understand what they were trying to go for on that, but I try not to think too much of what Lou Lamoriello is trying to do on a given day.
No, I agree. It's weird because I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe I'm giving him too much credit. He's an old school guy, so that's probably the case. But maybe, hey, he said, listen, we're making this deal about 5 weeks or 5.5 weeks before the trade deadline. Maybe come March 1st or March 3rd, he parlays that and he somehow gets a bigger return for Bo Horvat. I mean, I don't know. Like it was a very weird one, but considering that the Islanders are not in the playoffs as it stands, and probably, I mean, I don't see them making it either, but crazier things have happened. It's just, why trade the first round pick? I mean, that's the soft spot for them, is that if they're in the lottery, in the running for the first overall pick, they're going to keep it. They're going to keep that pick. So it's good for them on that end, but I don't know. I feel like it's a really weird one for Vancouver, and they didn't optimize what they could get there.
I think,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
For Bo Horvat, I mean, look, he gets out of Long Island, gets out of Vancouver, goes to Long Island, but you have to wonder, for Long Island, can they sign Bo Horvat to a long-term deal? Because you still have a month away from the trade deadline, guys, and who's to say the Islanders are going to make the playoffs? They might be out of it by the time we hit February 25th. And Lou Lamoriello is the type of guy who's very active, and he can get rid of guys like that. And if he thinks that, hey, Bo can get us a first-round pick back and maybe some more players involved, then there's no question that he could be back on the market in a month's time here, and his value might be even more. Prices for a team that might need a guy like Bo to put you over the top to go for a deep cup run, or maybe the cup itself by the time we hit mid-June.
Well, so there you go. So Mo, you think exactly as I do, because while we were sorting out the technical difficulties, I made that exact point. I said, hey, Lou Lamoriello, who knows? Maybe he thinks he could parlay this and just somehow get more than what he gave up already. Maybe I don't know what the Islanders think internally of Anthony Beauvillier, but I think it's fair to say, for a first round player, it's been there for a couple of years now. 40 points a season is it's not what they were expecting of him. So it's just yeah. I mean, I just don't know how Vancouver sees this.
Well, you think about Beauvillier, right? He's got 18 months left on his contract at $4.2 million, I think, left per year. So you have to think that for Vancouver, he might be in the block by next spring. If look, we don't think the Canucks are going to be anywhere close to being a playoff team next year, but he could fetch them value next spring, where they could get a first-round pick back and others back for Beauvillier. So this whole Bo Horvat thing might be like a Craig Rivet trade tree for them in 5 years from now, where they get great value in the long-term play of what they traded for Bo Horvat.
So to just bring it back, Scott, before you go, just to bring it back, what does the Bo Horvat trade and the return on him mean for the Canadians and for some of the potential names that are leaving?
It sets the price for a high-end UFA forward in this market right now. This is not a Josh Anderson-like blueprint, because Anderson has term left. Mm-hmm. This isn't quite Mike Hoffman, because Mike Hoffman, with all due respect, is not Bo Horvat. This doesn't so much impact the Canadians, but I think maybe Sean Monahan, and we don't know because Monahan is out injured, and we were supposed to get an update on him. We don't quite know what that is yet. Had Monahan kept playing the way that he was, I think a first-round pick would have easily been on the table. With him missing time now, I think it might be a second and a prospect, similar to like an Arturi Lehkonen trade last year. What this really does is Timo Meier for the Sharks is what this sets the asking price for him now. Is that Timo Meier is an expiring contract on a bad team who is going to try and ship him out and maximize profits on that for a team who wants to make the playoffs or make a run. And if a first middle six forward and let's say A-tier prospect for a team is the asking price, the Sharks now have their base to build off of, because Timo Meier is likely a more dynamic scorer than Bo Horvat is, but he's not a center, as far as I'm aware. Anyways, I don't watch a lot of the Sharks because staying up till 10 o'clock to watch them is not on my list of things to do at this point. It does set a baseline for things, though, and I think it's going to reevaluate people who think, what can we get for Evgeny Dadonov? What can you get for Jonathan Drouin? The answer as of right now is not as much as you think if Bo Horvat got a first, but this is also Vancouver took the first deal offered to them. Allegedly, they honed in on the Islanders, and that's what they did. Doesn't make much sense to me, but the Vancouver Canucks are a current just disaster piece of a franchise anyways, and I'm not going to read too deeply into what they do or don't do with their players and prospects.
Look, I think now for the Habs, unfortunately, guys, Sean Monahan might not get you full value as he would have been, say, 2 months ago. You go back to that Calgary game in Calgary where he played and his foot wasn't healthy and he hurt himself and he hasn't been the same since then. All these guys who've been banged up, I think now, rather than be dollar for dollar, are probably worth maybe 50, 60 cents on the dollar as we speak. And it's too bad because they would have gotten a good value in return for Sean Monahan because of what he brings as a second-line player, maybe a first-line player, friends to the level at that point. But, you look at Mike Hoffman. Could he bring back some value because he's starting to get hot now? What about Joel Edmondson? What could he bring back in a trade return here? So I think for Ken Hughes, unfortunately, that injury bug hit them at the wrong time, and you won't get that full return that you want to get back. But look, at the end of the day for Ken Hughes, we saw what he extracted in that whole Kirby Dach trade to get off Romanoff and bring in a Kirby Dach in the whole process here. If he can get off of these contracts and get something in return, second-round pick, maybe a first-round pick, and let's not forget, Ben Sherratt got to have an unprotected first-round pick from the Florida Panthers, which could end up being a top 10 pick, and perhaps they can package that to move up in the top 3 if they don't get Connor Bedard as the number 1 pick.
It's I think you mentioned the name of you both mentioned the name of Mike Hoffman at one point, and I don't know. I really since the injuries have been there all year for the Canadians, but it's never been quite like this. Like I said to Stu Cowan last week and 2 weeks ago when he would join me, I'm surprised they didn't call him up at this point. Guys, I hope you know how to skate because you might be next on the depth chart here. It's just insane. So since that's happened, I don't know. I kind of really don't mind Mike Hoffman's game. Granted, the Canadians haven't been playing much defense in those games, so it's not really, his defensive shortcomings are not really at the forefront anymore. But I don't know. He seems to be playing well when he's up in the lineup.
Mike Hoffman is potentially the most overhated player on this team. And I want to add context to that Mike Hoffman was brought in to fill a role that was not going to work out in Montreal. Same with David Savard we lost these pieces. Here's their great value brand version of them that we're going to bring in here. Power play doesn't work. Mike Hoffman lives and dies on the power play. If the power play doesn't work and you have Mike Hoffman, you might as well just decline the power play because it's not working to his strength. He can still shoot. He's got skill. It's just he makes baffling decisions sometimes. His underlying metrics have been surprisingly good, which has kind of led to me kind of reanalyzing how he plays. He's miscast, like a lot of people are on this team, in a role that doesn't fit them. The same that Jonathan Drouin was since he's gotten here. They were brought in and, hyped up to be, this is what they're going to do, and that's not the role that they play on this team. And Mike Hoffman is someone I think that if they got a functioning power play or an actual 5-on-5 game that played to his strengths, we'd see a return to form. And yeah, there's going to be some decline because he's getting older. But my biggest fear, and I know this is going to happen, is they're going to trade him to a team that lives on the power play. He's going to light it up, and everyone's going to go, why didn't he do that here? It's because the Canadians don't have the pieces to make that power play work here. I really do think that he's not as bad as people have made him out to be. He's become kind of the ire for a lot of people on this because Thomas Tatar left, who was a good possession forward and could score while being frustrating. And Mike Hoffman doesn't bring that same value, unfortunately. It's the same thing with Christian Dvorak. It's the same thing with David Savard. They were brought in to replace popular players from that cup run, and it's impossible to live up to that standard.
Not only that, though, when you think of Mike Hoffman, he's a crazy contradiction of a player, right? Like he's chaos for like 2 periods, and he smells like roses by the 3rd period when he scores 3 goals. And you think about his history. I mean, whether it's in Ottawa, San Jose, Florida, and in between, the controversy off the ice, he's very talented. But to use an NBA term, he's a spot shooter, right? He's got a spot like Cole Caulfield does on the left half boards, and bam, you give him that space, you give him an inch, he's going to score that goal going top shelf. So I think for Mike Hoffman, if Kent Hughes can get a deal that's going to blow him out of the water and say, you know what, we can get ourselves a young player perhaps, or maybe a draft pick of high caliber, one up, pull the trigger, get him off our books. And as you said before, guys, make your team flexible for the cap for years to come, because you mentioned about the whole cap moving up. Don't forget, guys, the Canadian TV contracts due in 4 years. So the cap will go up even more in 3-4 years from now. And that will help the Canadians become more flexible to re-sign their own guys in the system, and also go out there and perhaps get themselves a big fish or two to make this team perhaps a perennial contender in 5 years from now.
Yeah, and I again, it's so interesting the next 6 months for what is going to happen with this team. It's just really it's fascinating, and I love being along for the ride. You know, like it's last year when the trades were happening, you know, before the trade deadline, it's kind of like, oh, Kent Hughes did this. What's he going to do next now? Like, what? It's like a crazy reality TV show that has you hooked, just because it's so methodical, and it's just like you said, Scott, like everything is done with a purpose, and it's not just, you know, this guy's not working out, let's just, you know, ship him off, and you know, we're lucky to get anything. Before we move on to the all-star skills competition that was not entertaining, to put it lightly, let's talk about him, because we spoke about him very, very briefly. Kirby Dach, I want to get your guys' take, because, you know, I feel since, you know, the beginning, I want to say, of not this past week, but the week before, and I feel like that kind of plays into when they moved him to center. He's really been having a crazy coming out party. Like, it is insane. Anytime he's on the ice, he's dictating the pace of play. Any line he's on, or whoever's on his line at this point, because it's his line, you know, they're elevating their game. What has been the major difference for you guys in his game from, you know, let's just say even a month ago till now?
I'm kind of surprised that my biggest thought was, can he survive away from Caulfield and Suzuki? Because he was kind of struggling to get points. He was playing well, but not really getting the points he needed earlier on in the year. And then he just kind of clicked. And I'm not sure what it was, if it was just, you know, we talked with Martin St. Louis and they just kind of reevaluated things. But at center, Kirby Dach's playmaking ability, he's brought the physicality as well, which is good to see him use that huge frame of his in a way there. And I know we just got done talking about trades, but the one person I want to see on a line with him, because they play that slow, methodical possession style in the offensive zone, even if it's not always flashy, is Jesse Puljujarvi. They're big bodied. They like to play with the puck, keep it on their stick, and create chances by just cycling teams and holding and grinding that down. But they also have the skills to do amazing things. Kirby Dach's really been a revelation this year. I didn't know what to expect, because never really hit highs in Chicago, but Chicago is also a franchise trending way down very quickly here. I get why they did it now. And to have a Suzuki Dach, and then you have Beck coming up, you have whoever they draft in the top 5 this year who's going to be in your system. It's a huge boon for the Canadians. They have flexibility at center to do whatever they want with that. And I'm really excited to see what levels Kirby Dach can continue to get to here. And what about next year, when they have maybe a functioning power play, more 5-on-5 scoring besides Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki and Kirby Dach? What is that next level he can get to? Because he's only 21 years old. There's still more growing for him to do. And it's very easy to forget that, because he's been in the NHL since he was drafted. So he gives the appearance of someone who's been here much longer than he actually has.
I think, guys, it turned for Kirby U.S. Thanksgiving against the Chicago Blackhawks, right? When he scored that shootout goal and essentially said "bleep you" to the Blackhawks and the fans in the stands at the United Center. And you're right, guys. The flexibility that Kirby's brought now to this team, where he can play in the first line wing, play as a second line center, I think that's really helped him. I think Martin St. Louis has really instilled that confidence in him that was lacking in Chicago, where he told him, look, make your mistakes. If you bleep up, you bleep up. It's okay. As long as you learn from that and get better from it, we'll make you a better player. And you see it out there, the two-way play he has now, being that guy for the Habs in that supporting role behind Nick Suzuki at times here, has made him much more desirable, that you can say to yourself that this is a future foundation piece for the franchise growth going through the growing pains as we speak, that now moving forward here, that you have one last problem to worry about. Because remember, when they acquired Kirby Dach in the July draft in Montreal, what was the biggest question mark? His health. He stayed healthy, right? And can he produce, being a former top 3 player? And he has. He's done those things right now. Knock on wood, if you're a Habs fan, that this is potentially a guy that, hey, Ken Hughes, 5 years down the road, if he's still a GM, which we think he will be, that he might have pulled off a great heist against the Chicago Blackhawks and got himself a guy in Kirby Dach for low value in terms of where he was from a prospect perspective, and now a guy that's going to be a foundation piece for years to come. So the Habs have done well and locking him up as well. I think the Habs are in great position with Kirby Dach with the potential that he has moving forward.
And I think the biggest indicator of how good the Kirby Dach trade has been, and again, like you said, like you guys said, he's only 21 years old. There's a lot of runway left, and there's a lot of growing to do. But the biggest indicator is, we like to say, who won the trade? Who won the trade? 2 months after it happened. Well, I have not heard pretty much since the trade has happened. What's Alex Romanov up to? I couldn't tell you. I haven't heard anything of him.
Can't go now. Show him around Long Island.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna look up Alexander Romanov's stats right now because I don't. Let's see here. He has in 52 games 1 goal and 14 assists plus 31 penalty minutes. For what he is, the Islanders are not a high-scoring team. The biggest thing out of all of this that I think a lot of Habs fans are forgetting, and that I try to remind myself of too, is that Frank Nazar has not played a game for the University of Michigan this year, who was Chicago picked with the pick Montreal traded to them. But at the same time, Kirby Dach is playing in the NHL, playing very well in the NHL right now. Even if it ends up being Frank Nazar ends up great and Kirby Dach ends up being good for the Canadiens, it's a win-win situation. There's right now not a downside for the Canadiens unless Kirby Dach, and I'm not going to say what follows up with this because of how cursed this season has been. It's hard to see a downside right now for Montreal in this trade, and I'm not going to try to find one because I'm going to enjoy what silver linings we have in this season before they end up on LTIR for the next 6 months.
I think for Kirby Dach, we all agree that he needed a change of scenery. It was unfortunate what happened at the World Juniors before COVID canceled that tournament in Edmonton back in the winter of 2021. And it's benefited him, especially in the hockey bubble of Montreal, where they can chew you up and spit you out if you don't produce in one period. He has been great for this franchise. And again, we go back to that point about the youth system being implemented here. You got Suzuki, you got Caulfield, you got Kirby Dach. Can Kent Hughes, build around these 3 guys and make this not only a 1-line team, but a 4-line team that, like the Tampa Bay Lightning are, the 4th line can come in Game 7 and win you a game on the road when you're playing Toronto, as it was for the Lightning last spring. So I think for Ken Hughes, he's got those pieces now. Can you build around those 3 foundation guys and make this team much more balanced and lethal and mature moving forward?
It all comes down to development. There's just so many pieces there that are already there, that you see the potential in them, and there's just going to be more coming in. They have 2 right now. If the season ended the way it was, they have 2 top 10 picks, and they got a boatload of others. Kent Hughes said he wants a 3rd first-round pick. It's really all looking up for the Canadiens off the ice, not so much on the ice, which is not necessarily a bad thing in a season like this. They got to be bottoming out. All right, let's move on. We're gonna take a look at the NHL, but before we do that, shop for all your sports licensed lifestyle apparel, including hoodies, caps, and tees of your favorite teams and all major leagues, as well as our sick merch at sportsbuffshop.com. Use code SICK10 for 10% off all their items. And we are also brought to you by Playground. Playground has over 600 machines, poker tournaments, and Playground casino games, daily promotions, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. I was actually in the area of Playground today. I took a little trip to Plattsburgh and did some groceries, which is, Scott, just for reference, Plattsburgh, New York is about a hour or so drive from Montreal. Get the nice American groceries, and this is going to come full circle. This is relevant, I promise. I had Chipotle for dinner. It was delicious. A nice Mexican chain down in the States. I believe there's one in Toronto, but we don't have it over here in Montreal. Why is that relevant? Because Nick Suzuki was a participant in the pitch and puck event at the All-Star game. And he not only was a participant, but he was the winner of that event. And what did he win? A year's worth of free Chipotle. I told you, it was coming full circle. Nick Suzuki, enjoy that free Chipotle for a year. I don't know how well that's going to, how light that's going to keep you on the ice. But anyways, the pitch and puck, it's basically, they were playing, for those who weren't watching, it was basically a pre-taped event where the players, it was 4 players, go onto a golf course. They were on the 9th hole of the Plantation Golf Course, which is a town right outside of Sunrise. And they would have a sheet of synthetic ice, shoot a light puck, I don't know what it was made of, down a course. And eventually when the puck got onto the green, they changed to a ball and they putted in. Very weird event. Okay. How would you feel if you were in the crowd, you paid to be in the crowd at the NHL All-Star Skills Competition, and that was only one of the 2 pre-taped events that you're just kind of just watching on TV? NHL, man, figure it out.
I'll never understand how they can't get this. And this year seemed even more confusing because they had one event leading into another in a way that wasn't explained super well. It was kind of on in the background while I was watching the Rocket game for something. And even I look over and I go, wait, why are they doing this event? What is going on? And for something that's meant to be fun and lighthearted, if no one knows what's going on, no one cares. I'll never understand how hard it is to just get this right. People want to watch dudes shoot the puck really hard. They want to watch dudes do fun stuff in the shootout. They want to watch dudes skate really fast. And they probably want to watch Gritty hit someone with a cake. It's a very simple concept. I don't understand why they can't get this right at all.
I think the highlight of the skills was Ovechkin's kid scoring a Luongo. Mm-hmm. And PK Subban being the ESPN MC, right? I mean, on the ice. That's what it was. It was disjointed. Look, South Florida, we know, guys, isn't an NHL market. I guess the VIPs that they had as judges were not even Miami related. They had a guy from the Arkells who's not from Miami. You would have brought more locals, right? Guys who are recognizable in the market that you can say, hey, here's Miami's own so-and-so. That didn't happen. And I just thought that, besides uniforms being cool, the Miami Vice themed uniforms that they had for this edition, that's about it. That's about it that we saw, right? And Connor McDavid doing what he did for the accuracy competition. But this is the NHL trying to toy with, make things different. And they did in Vegas last year for the All-Star game or whatever that was. And we're going to see it in Toronto next year. What they'll do, probably go Lake Ontario or the CN Tower for all we know. So they're going to toy with this and do trial and error until further notice. But again, it definitely lacked the panache we want to see from the skills that was lacking on the ice tonight.
And so the Miami Vice thing, it's funny. I wrote on my notes. I wrote basically, you guys both hit the nail on the head without knowing it. I wrote in big, NHL is bad. Mitch Marner, good, because he did a Miami Vice thing in his breakaway challenge. He's wearing a white suit, in his breakaway challenge. That was cool. Gritty, good. I want to see Gritty. Gritty was like dancing around on the red carpet. He looked like he was having the time of his life. For me, as a viewer, the funniest moment was nothing that happened on the ice that was scripted. It was Brady Tkachuk was mic'd up with Sportsnet, and they wanted to have him doing, just like, what's going on down at ice level, talk to him. Oh, how's it been down there? Did you know this player could do that? Whatever. Anyways. And he's sitting in between Erik Karlsson and Mitch Marner, who are just having a full-on conversation. And Mitch Marner is like yelling right in front of Brady. And he's just like, dude, like Brady looks over. He's like, dude, I'm doing an interview right now. Can you shut up? And he's like, are you kidding me? I'm talking to Eric. And then he just gets up and skates away. Like, that was the funniest thing that happened. That's lighthearted. And that's, Brady Tkachuk, I guess, showing a little bit of his personality. I thought of some solutions, because there's no use in just bitching about something and not providing a solution. So NHL, this is free advice. It's very good, I think. How about this? Because the pitch and puck, I feel like that was a missed opportunity. Why don't we flip the script? Why don't you pre-tape the events that everyone wants to see, like hardest shot and, a breakaway challenge and, the accuracy shooting, pre-tape that. And why don't you have the players play in a golf tournament? How about it? I think people would love that.
The problem is, Matt, is that what's become the biggest partner for the NHL? Gambling. People are gambling on the hardest shot. People are gambling on the fastest skater. There's that element. So you pre-tape it and it leaks out, hey, Connor McDavid won the accuracy shot. That just spoils the whole notion of gambling being a part of the NHL now.
One of the things I saw suggested on Twitter, too, to make this more fun is they do a mascot game. Why are you not showing that in the arena? You telling me, like, even if there are like some kids playing in there, that you don't want to see Gritty just absolutely hip check a child?
I would love that.
Don't lie to me. You want to see a dude in it, because there are video montages of NFL mascots at like halftime playing Pee Wee games, and I mean just absolutely destroying kids on the field, and it's hilarious. Maybe not on ice because dangerous, but whatever. Let people have fun with this. Have the mascots play as part of the All-Star game. Do the skills contest and then have the All-Star game. Like Mitch Marner in his Miami Vice suit is going to pass to Carlton the Bear on a breakaway or something like that. Give people that opportunity. Yeah, there's still the actual All-Star game, but have the fun thing there. All of us have played NHL where you have the threes tournament, which is just ridiculous. This puck's worth 4 goals. This one takes away 2 from the other team. Just do a ridiculous thing like that. We don't need so many convoluted things that don't work. There was the one accuracy contest where the boards didn't work. They had the slap shot thing this year where the surfboards weren't falling over because they built it wrong. How hard is it to just styrofoam things that explode when you hit them? Surfboards that fall over. Just simplify it. Don't overthink the skills competition. Make it simple. Make it easy to follow. So all the fans who are there, who have probably been, getting drinks and watching this, are having a good time. If they can't follow it on the ice while they're there, how do you expect us at home to follow this too? It's just not a thing that's going to happen.
Well, not only that, though, right? I mean, there's that, hey, we got the first event, but stay tuned for the end of it. In hour number 3, like, there was that whole gap. Like, just finish off the event. If this is your prime event, keep it as a prime event, but don't start it and wait and do something else in between that. Just finish the event and move on to the next event and kind of open and close that chapter and keep on going. Keep the conveyor belt going with these events here rather than stop and wait an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, to play that or finish off that event.
And I will say, I mean, as someone, I work in marketing, so I feel for the people who are putting these events together and the people that have to advertise them. But I will say, I do appreciate what they've done the past 2 years, which last year was in Vegas. What they did was they did some outdoor event, again, pre-taped, but it had to do with playing blackjack while shooting pucks at cards. That's a thing about Vegas. I could appreciate that, and I could appreciate the attempt at what the pitch and puck was. Just, I think you missed the golden opportunity. You make the All-Star game, the skills competition, just like a whole day thing. They could have played a round of golf, done the three best events at it used to be called the BB&T Center. I don't know what it's called now, but where Florida plays. It doesn't have to be. I think this event was 3 hours. And like you said, Scott, half the time I didn't know what was going on. I was scrolling Twitter, and then I look up and it's something completely different. I'm like, what the hell? I just watched Cale Makar do a lap in the preliminary round of the fastest skater, and now it's I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's really mind-boggling. Also, just as a side note, I really think they should bring back the fantasy draft. I thought that was fantastic.
No, it makes too much sense, too much fun. Can't have that. Can't have a bunch of drunk hockey players having
Can't
fun.
do that.
If they show too much personality, they have to pay them more or something. I don't know. Everyone remembers Phil Kessel sitting there and, Alex Ovechkin taking a photo of him.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't have too much fun. You can't have fans live tweeting your players being drunk. Like, half of us haven't seen them drunk in their, native city itself. But I agree. Bring back the fantasy draft. Have more mascots involved in the games and stuff. It's such a simple solution, and the NHL next year is going to be like, actually, we just pre-taped everything. So there's that's it. We've pre-taped everything.
So, but still come to the arena and watch it and watch it on the Jumbotron.
Exactly.
But the thing is, though, in these new markets or these warm weather markets, if this is done in Toronto, which it will be next year, or Minnesota, or Philly, like a hockey mad city, it's embraced. But in Florida, you just felt like there was a disconnect with the fans who were there. Like, okay, what's going on here? And so I think the fact that they didn't, bring clarity to the events itself. They'll have next year in Toronto, and I think they might go to Vegas or who knows down the road again, because they want to keep that rotation of warm weather cities in play. That you want to make sure you kind of perfect it. But it's a great point. If you do maybe you keep the 3-on-3 format, but you do a draft of you pick your best 10 guys per team and go from there. I think that might bring a little bit more spice to the NHL All-Star game, as it was before they went back to the old format of divisionals being your representation.
I also like the fan voting. I thought it was really cool when John Scott was in the game, and I get it. That was a troll job by the fans. NHL Twitter is the best. It's second to none. But to me, it just shows what they could do, what the NBA does in their skills competition. And I understand that, people aren't going to fill the seats to go see, just for example, because he's the first player to pop off in my head. I know he's injured, but no one's going to no one is paying to see, Paul Byron go do the fastest skater. But just because just because he's not the best player, it doesn't mean he can't be the fastest skater and be a part of that skill competition. I find if you get more players involved, it could be more fun, because those players probably are going to care a little more, because they finally getting some recognition of being great NHL players in their own right, and not just the face of every team that's basically who is at the event.
And I think that's right, is we've seen the Canadians do their own skills contests and stuff for the fan weekend and everything. And it's always well received, that it's always a good time, because it's just everyone being themselves and goofing around and having a good time. And I want to see, fastest skater can be around the NHL, not just the people who are picked. Pick people for the All-Star game. If they want to participate in these, go ahead. Because Paul Byron's time previously, when the Canadians did it, wasn't that far off from McDavid and McKinnon's times, and they're two superstars. Can you imagine how fun that would be? Part of the fun is, oh wow, this dude's going to do it. Like John Scott winning MVP, maybe not to that level of hype with everything around that, but why the hell not? It's make it more approachable, more fun for everybody. It's the NHL is going to, like I said, they constantly overthink it and everything, and it's to their own detriment. Is take a step back and realize it's not that deep. Keep it simple. Make it fun. It's about the fans. It's not about what you think is going on. entertain the people that are there and entertain the people who are watching on TV on a Friday night for some reason.
The problem is though, when you have ESPN now as a TV partner in TNT, you want the stars. Like those are star-driven networks. When it was on NBC, it's NBC for sure. But now the NHL is trying to shift its focus from being the good old third and fourth liner guys to now we got to make this into a star-driven league, because you look at the NBA, you look at the NFL, it's all about stars and names. And that's where baseball has lost itself into its own abyss, and the hockey fans and the hockey decision makers don't want the NHL to fall into that regional category and no longer be must-see TV. And that's why it's important for them. I think, for example, look, the Oilers are playing the Habs on Super Bowl Sunday afternoon. That has to be a primetime hockey night in Canada game for the viewers in Canada, not Sunday afternoon before the biggest football game in North America. They have to shift their mindset and make sure that you take your Tuesdays, your Wednesdays and Thursdays, and make it into prime time so your stars are being displayed. And that's where the All-Star game becomes much more of a must-see thing than being like, what the bleep just happened? What's going on right now in South Florida during the skills competition?
Well, the thing that just bugs me so much, and it made what you just said, Mo, it's a great point, but it just made me think of it, make that hockey game prime time, because everyone's prepared to watch TV that day. Everyone's going to be watching the Super Bowl. So, you might be prepping for your Super Bowl party, home cooking. You have the hockey game on in the background. That's great. What really bugs me to no end, and I just can't get my head around it. The NHL scheduled 2 games last Sunday. They were some of the best games that were played this season, and high profile too. It was the Boston Bruins against the Carolina Hurricanes, 2 teams with single-digit regulation losses at this point in the season. And they had the Leafs, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander against Alexander Ovechkin and the Capitals. What time did they put those freaking games at? They put them at 3 o'clock. Do you know what was happening at 3:30 in the afternoon? The NFC Championship game. Like, what are we doing here? 20 people saw those games. And those 20 people were probably, they never heard of football in their life. Like, what are we doing? Those were fantastic games. I saw the highlights. I watched the extended highlights. Incredibly entertaining. But it's just they can't get out of their own way. And it's nuts to me. It's nuts. And I could go on forever about this. I really can.
Constantly in their own way is that it's like Saturday night is primetime hockey. And there was a lot of things that came out this week about, what's going on with the ratings and this and that they put games on Sunday, or some of them, and they're just getting slaughtered by the NFL because you're not going to beat the NFL in North America. It's not going to happen. And someone brought up a good point, is that why don't we see earlier games more often? Like Saturday, college football is one thing, but why are there not earlier games on like Saturday? Yeah, there's like usually a 1 o'clock game that's on, used to be NBC. I don't know if it's TNT or NHL Network, but like, why not have earlier games? You can get people then who are going to go to those games earlier on because it's not taking up their entire night, or watching it on TV. And then they're going to watch the other ones later on when they do something else, and you're getting more eyes on your product. And I mean, I would like that, to be quite honest, but it's so many simple solutions. And one of the other big things is learn to stagger a game, for the love of God. 15 minutes. You have all these games on like a Tuesday night, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7:30, 8, 8, 9:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock. Okay, the later ones are staggered, but you have 6 games going on at the same time that all go to intermission at the same time. How do you expect people to tune in and watch these things? There's so many little basic solutions that they can do to help things out. And there have been threads and threads on Twitter. They're not asking for complete overhauls. Stagger games. Start them at different times. Start them earlier on the weekend so people can watch those if they want to. And it seems like they're just hell-bent on shooting themselves in the foot and making it overly complicated. And they don't have to. They really, truly don't have to do that.
I think to counter that point, with ESPN being a partner and TNT being a partner, ESPN is saturated with sports properties, right? Like Saturday afternoon, you think about it during the falls, it's college football, right? Whether it's on ABC or on the ESPN family of networks. So that's out the window. And I don't think TNT wants to go up against college football Saturday and be lost in translation, right? They've kind of built, like you think about TNT now, they've built up their sports properties with MLB, the NBA, AEW for wrestling as well, and now the NHL. And they found a great spot for being Wednesday night hockey. That is their market, right? Wednesday night hockey, maybe Sunday afternoon hockey. And they can ill afford to go up against the NFL or college football because we all know, guys, and we're very clear and we understand how the NFL and college football works in North America. They will get a 4-to-1 ratio or even 5-to-1 ratio of viewership compared to the NHL fan base, which is unfortunate. But, you got to pick your spots here. I think maybe ESPN now doing Sunday night hockey could be their way to get back some numbers once the NFL season is done next Sunday.
Well, guys, hopefully the All-Star games tomorrow, because it's a 3-game tournament, provide a little more entertainment for everyone, than tonight's activities. Because hey, tomorrow afternoon it's gonna be, guess what? Minus effing freezing again. So people will be indoors watching TV. So hopefully it's something that you're flipping on and it's something to, it's worth keeping on. So guys, it's already 11 o'clock. Time flies when you're having fun. 11 o'clock Eastern, that is. Scott, thank you very much for joining us. Mo, thank you for joining us. And we'll talk to you guys very, very soon in the near future.
Take care.
All right, that was our Sick Friday roundtable. That's pretty much it for me, right? We're getting done on time, and Yellow and Sammy can go to bed on time. They could do all their post show work and go to bed on time, and that's it. NHL just basically just do better. By the way, obviously, Habs fans, you guys know the next Habs game is on February 11th. So that it'll be an afternoon game, I believe, because it is Super Bowl weekend, and that's usually family weekend for the Canadians. Thank you very much for listening. I don't have my outro anymore of Go Bengals, but that's it. Have a great weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different, 8.6, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.